Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Think Clinical podcast. My name is Hamza. It's always great to be here, and I appreciate every single one of you for everything you do for this channel. Today we are going to be continuing that conversation around what you need to consider, especially for people like us who have to transition from the clinical practice into healthcare entrepreneurship. And I plan on doing a series of these just so that you get a good understanding of how you can prepare yourself adequately for the Doctorpreneurship journey. And a big part of this conversation today, as you know, would be mostly centered around your mindset and just making that shift from clinical to entrepreneurship, or just embracing both mindsets as a clinician and also as a healthcare entrepreneur. So we are going to be looking at a couple of things, but before we do that, if you haven't done so already, please remember to subscribe, like and share, so that you get these notifications anytime we put up a new content. But when we look at this topic in general, one of the things that we need to appreciate is the fact that the path from clinical practice to healthcare business, as a clinician especially, requires not just a shift in your focus or what you do on a daily basis. It also requires a shift of your mindset. And a lot of the time as clinicians, the traditional selfless approach to what we do gradually eats into anything else we try to get ourselves into. So we focus mainly on patient care, we focus mainly on what we can give to people, but we don't look at how we can, or what we are going to get back from it, and how we apply what we are getting back into creating more impact. So today a lot of this conversation would be centered around how you shift that mindset, how you get out of that identity trap. So a lot of the time, we as doctors especially are identified by what we do, but not who we truly are. So you see a doctor who is doing something outside being a doctor, probably retailing items in the market, and people will make comments like, hey, I don't think this is a job for a doctor. Or you see a doctor who is trying to start a business, and people come to him and say, I don't think you really understand what this is supposed to be about. Let's help you get out of it. Because doctors are all often, by virtue of what we do, confined to consulting rooms, confined to the walls of the hospital, confined to the operating theaters. We are not given that opportunity to be or be defined by who we are instead of what we do. So you need to get into that space where you are able to create this narrative that helps people identify you by who you are, that you are this person who has a passion, who happens to be a doctor, but you also have a passion for entrepreneurship, you have a passion for creating bigger impacts. You need to get into that space. So how do you even get there in the first place? Now, just so that we are clear, when you become a doctorpreneur, or a doctor and an entrepreneur, you need to embrace some new roles and responsibilities that are clearly not part of traditional medical training. So you have a deep-rooted identity of being a doctor, and sometimes that deep-rooted identity of being a doctor hamper with your ability to be a successful businessman. And whether you like it or not, some of those things will come creeping up on you. Now let's look at this identity trap. What does it entail? The first thing is, your training as a medical doctor is purely focused on patient care. All through your training, you are taught to do the best thing in the interest of the patient at any point in life. Your aim is to get that sick patient well enough to go home and happy. Now, when we look at this from a clinical standpoint, that is the best approach, and that is the only approach you need to be looking at. But then, the moment you want to move away or move into another space of entrepreneurship, you will need to revise that mindset. What does that mean? You will need to be in a place where you are able to identify. Now look at how we overcome these traps and these mindset related issues. But you have to move into a place where now all of a sudden you are looking at not only the livelihood or the lives of the people who you are treating for diseases, but you're looking at the lives of people who actually have come to you, are working for you, and are dependent on you for some form of income at the end of the month to also go and feed their family. So you are now looking at two things. You're now going to be, your mindset is going to move from just, instead of just focusing on a patient and their well-being, you're also focusing on employees and their well-being, and making sure that you are keeping the business healthy enough for them to be able to get something to go home with. So that's the first thing. Shifting from that patient-focused mindset and possibly ignoring any other thing around you or the welfare of anybody else around you or who works with you, because you don't have to pay them. Someone else has to, and you could care less how they get the money to pay them. That is one of the biggest things that you need to look at. The second thing is the pressure of society and the expectations of society can create an added pressure on you migrating into a field like that. What do I mean by that? I can use myself as an example. Anytime I spent most of my time doing other things apart from clinical work, which is mostly in healthcare business, you would find people, you find peers, you find friends, you find family saying, hey, it looks like you're losing focus of what your life or your profession is supposed to look like. But they do forget that in pursuing healthcare entrepreneurship, that impact that I had as an individual would be amplified by hundreds and hundreds of folds, because now not only am I treating a patient, I'm treating multiple patients, because I'm able to affect the lives of multiple providers at a time. I'm able to use that, I'm able to translate that into a bigger impact. But then society will give you that pressure. So that is how the identity traps you as a clinician. And those are some of the things you need to look at. You need to look at the trap of just now looking narrowly at just the patient, and looking broadly at the patient and the people who actually work for you and their livelihood and their income at the end of the month. The second part of this is now going to be, how do you overcome this? Because once you get yourself trapped into it, you find yourself trying to venture into a new field or an alternative career, which I'll talk about in my next episode. And then you get yourself pulled back, and then you want to identify and then get yourself pulled back. So these are some of the things that you need to do. But before you overcome them, one of the first things, and we are going to go through just two things that you need to do in order to be able to overcome that identity trap that holds you in a box as just a doctor with no other capability apart from patient care. Now, the first one is that you need to actually recognize the spectrum of capabilities that you have, and that's the only way you can break out of the confines of what this career and this identity as a doctor puts you in. Now, when you look at the strengths that you have, it begins to redefine your identity, because then you are able to see yourself as having more capability beyond what you're already doing and what you're already good at as a clinician. And that opens you up. So if you have the capacity or the capability of being a good provider or a good entrepreneur, you're able to now start looking at, okay, how do I leverage both capabilities while still affecting the lives of the people I have committed myself to affecting, or even more people, as I said. So that's the first thing. You need to really, really recognize the spectrum of capabilities that the strengths that you have, and use those to redefine what you think or what you know you're capable of doing. Now, the second thing would now be, you need to embrace both identities. Now, the mistake a lot of people do is that when they are clinicians and they are moving into healthcare entrepreneurship, they just shift all their focus into healthcare entrepreneurship, and they forget about the clinical identity that they had. You have already demonstrated after years of clinical practice that you have the capability of being a good clinician. Now you're exploring a new field of healthcare entrepreneurship, which you are either going to be successful or not. But whatever the situation is, it's an identity, it's a capability you've identified that you have. So once you start moving into that space, you don't ignore what you're already good at and what you already identify with, and shifting that focus completely and thinking that the society will just accept you all of a sudden as a healthcare entrepreneur and with no clinical background. You need to carve out a personality that embraces both personalities. So once that is done, you have the leverage now to be both a good clinician who thinks mainly about patient care, but while thinking about the patient care, is also thinking about the health of their business, is thinking about what can make the business profitable, is thinking about how you can make the business sustainable, is thinking about how each month the people who show up to work for you can go home with some income that they'll be able to feed their families with. So these are the things that you need to look at. But overall, you need to identify a mindset that helps you. I call it a selfish mindset that helps you to grow as a person. And one of those things is that once you start going into a new sector, you need to start prioritizing your growth. And that's why I call it a selfish mindset, because the long-term effect of you prioritizing your growth and seeking ways of getting knowledge and getting the skill to be able to feed that growth is what would actually feed into how much impact, how much you can, the quality of care you're now going to be able to provide patients at the end, the quality of service, the quality of stability you'll be able to provide your employees, the sustainability of a business. That selfish mindset in the beginning that you adopt for your own personal growth is what would drive you into that space. The second thing is that you also need to pursue a lot your passion, but you need to balance that passion with profitability. Now, we all have things we are passionate about. We have ideas we love. We have ideas that we wish we know or we believe so strongly that they will change the world. But whether or not those ideas are profitable, we don't know. So the second thing you need to be sure of is that, and again, it's a selfish mindset, is that you need to get into that space where you pick up passions, you pick up ideas that not only impact societies but are profitable, because anything you start with, it has to be sustainable. Otherwise, you're just going to be that person who jumps into ventures out of passion, and because they're not profitable, you're unable to sustain them in the long term, and you have to come back again and do the same thing all over again and all over again. So these are things that you need to be paying attention to. So pursue both passion and profitability. You don't pursue only passion, or you don't pursue only profitability. You need to pursue both. The last one is you need to stay hungry, and you need to stay hungry for more. You have to be hungry for more impact. You have to be hungry for more resources. You have to be hungry for growth. That is the mindset of an entrepreneur. If you cannot stay hungry for better quality of patient care, we are hungry for a bigger impact, hungry for more growth, hungry for sustainability, it is not sustainable. So that is another mindset you need to have. But if you put all these together, you do understand that what we are trying to say, or what I'm trying to say with this episode, is that it's not as easy as just putting down your tools in the operating room and walking straight into the boardroom. It's a process, and that process doesn't only come with a renewal of responsibilities. It comes with a renewal of identity. It comes with a renewal of your mindset. And once you can get that right, then that transition becomes as smooth as you can think about anything else to be. So this has been another episode of the Think Clinical podcast. Thank you so much. Always great to be here. If you haven't done so already, please remember to subscribe, like, and share. And we will see you now next episode, where we will talk about what alternative careers, if you start shifting this mindset, what alternative careers can you shift this mindset into. We'll see you soon. Take care.